colonial Ghana, chieftaincy was the main system of governance. It survived the exploitative British imperialism in the 19th century, and it has endured both civilian and military post-independence regimes. Do you know how chiefs are installed? Do you know the rituals that are performed during the installment of chiefs? Well, some also say that since the introduction of the political system of governance, it has somehow limited the authority of the chiefs to rule in our society. Well, let's find out. In today's episode of Our Roots, my guest, who is a man of respect and authority. He hails from the Opoku family and also a royal from Idumasa in the eastern region. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Marketing, and with a determination of standing out in his community, he has been practicing as a marketer both locally and internationally. That did not change his love and belief in culture. He has in-depth knowledge in the traditions of the Ghanaian linguistics. Well, I'm talking about none other than Nana Ansah Kwao IV of Idumasa in the eastern region. And he will help us dissect the issues of chieftaincy in this episode. You're welcome, Nana.
Thank you very much, and Akwemu to be precise.
Oh, okay.
But I'm honored to be on your show.
Oh, it's good to have you
You're
here.
doing good.
Thank you so much. But Nana, before we even get into deeper issues, who is a chief?
Well, the chief is the father, the spiritual and custodian of a particular people in a particular area. So basically, you're the spiritual leader, the father, and the custodian of everything that belongs to a people in a particular area.
So who can be a chief?
Well, from my side, which is a matrilineal heritage, you should be related to the stew through the first woman that owned the stew.
Okay.
So assuming you are in a Dumasa, the first ever woman that lived there, i.e. conquered. So if I went to conquer Idumasa today, my wife then becomes the queen there.
Okay.
So all my wife's children now are eligible royals. However, the boys' children cannot inherit. It's only the girls. So it continues by the girls. Because with the matrilineal heritage, it's believed that no matter who the woman gives birth with, it's still the woman's blood.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about the man, but it's about the woman. So you should be related to the stool through a woman.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how we go.
Okay.
So my children cannot inherit me. I know people are obsessed with Nigerian films and things that, then your son is the next chief. No, it's either my sister's children or my sister or my auntie's children. You must be related through a woman to continue the lineage.
Okay. So talking about the relations, the woman who is connected to the royal family, who has children, may probably have more than a son.
Yeah.
So how is the next king or chief elected?
Well, they say so even though logically you would say let's go with the eldest son, the eldest son may not necessarily be cut out for the position or may not even want it. My uncle was supposed to be the chief. He said, look, I'm too old. God bless his soul. He just passed anyway. He said, look, I'm too old, so you go and do it. But then I have two other uncles who are older. So he has like two other siblings who are older than me. Yet he bypassed all of them and said, no, you are the right candidate. So you go. So yes, there may be siblings that may be older, but sometimes there's somebody who's cut out and they think, look, he will have more time, he's more devoted, he's more, has more links to culture, so let's give it to him.
Okay, but Nana, I know that there are people in the royal family called kingsmen, or in the palace called kingsmen, so they make kings. So so in your scenario, your uncle asks that you step in. Is there a way, or do you think that with that process, he has to speak to the king's men in the palace before he makes that
Yes.
decision?
You're right. I mean, he got the request from the king's men
Okay.
that he should come and, occupy the stool. And he said no, he wasn't going to occupy. So they told him that find us somebody, and that's how come I got chosen.
Okay.
So all things being equal, or all other things being equal, there's no chief. So the Abusuapenyin would inform the queen mother that, i.e., your son, who you gave to us to become the king, is no more. So you find us another one. You have to, because the relationship between the king and the queen mother is mother and son.
Okay.
Whether biological or not, the relationship officially is that the queen mother is your mother. So the mother is basically protecting the stool in terms that she has to make sure that the occupant of the school is related to that school through a woman who comes from the family.
Okay.
That's the queen mother's primary role. Now, so the queen mother will be informed that the king has passed. She then has to look through her children, not biological, but basically all children related to the stool through a woman, and find out who a suitable candidate would be. Now, suitable candidate will be depending on the situation at the time. It could be that the town is going through major litigation, so the best candidate will be somebody who's has a law background.
Okay.
It could be that they are going through battle and conquest. So the good candidate then will be somebody with a big biceps who can fight. So based on the scenario, then she will go through and say, look, let's take Kofi, let's take Yao. Ebusuapenyi will take this candidate and then go and inform the other chiefs that this is the person that the Queen Mother has given me to be installed. And it's basically speak now or forever hold your peace. Do you know anything bad of him which disqualifies him to be chief? They will deliberate and they say, oh no, this guy has been to prison before. No, this guy was on drugs. No, this guy's behavior is untold of. Get me somebody else. If there's no such thing, the candidate then is shown to the town that this is the person we have chosen to adore, as a chief. And when you are in the room, when you are in confinement, nothing spiritual goes on. I mean, but you're meant to lie on the floor, bare floor, very uncomfortable, to remind you that once you are lifted as a chief, it's not everybody who sleeps in luxury. There are people who are sleeping like this. So we always be mindful. That's only significant. There's nothing. You see, even though we like to spiritualize and, devilish everything, it's just all principles to remind you that you're going to be lifted from ordinary citizen to chieftaincy status. Now, when you get there, do not forget that they once upon a time you were also an ordinary citizens. So every decision you take, nobody should be disadvantaged, including those who are on board.
Before a king is installed, just as you're put in confinement, there are a number of chairs or stools that you have to, with your eyes blindfolded, you have to pick one. So that's like wakunya ding. How true is that?
Yes, but now they're not very strict on that. Now we pick and choose which name you want and you kind of lobby. Yeah, but yes, there hasn't been a chief with that name before. They will make a stool for you, a black stool will be made for you, and the stool will be left in the room. Now, if you live your life really well, the subsequent chiefs who come always want to bear your name because of the track record you left.
Okay.
I remember when I was going to be a chief, right? There was either Intim Jackery or Ansah Kwao. Now I thought Intim Jackery sounded mean, and I wanted Intim Jackery. And my uncle who took me said, "No, you're going to be Ansah Kwao." I thought, oh, that's too simple. However, after ascending the throne, the history and the legacy that Ansah Kwao left, I'm happy I'm Ansah Kwao and not Jackery. Because there's so many things that. And there's been two Ansah Kwaos, and funny enough, they all came from this house. So I'm the third Ansah Kwao.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the third Ansah Kwao. So now the reason why the Ansah Kwaos came from Ekropong is that many years ago there was a war in Ekropong, and there was a mercenary who came from Edumasa, Jekiti area to help the Okuapims fight. And he was so good at war. So after the war, they installed him as a Kronti Hine in Ekropong, and he didn't go back. So some ladies from Edumasa came to find out why it is that the war has ended and he hadn't come back. When he came, he was a royal or, living lush. And he married them off into the palace. So they also didn't go. So they stayed and gave birth. And so the Ansah Kwaos here are the descendants of these ladies who came and never returned. And so the family then split up. There's those in Edumasa and there are those in Ekropong.
Okay.
So that's how come the Ansah Kwaos come from Ekropong. But the legacy they left, you're proud to associate, even though I thought the Team Jakari name sounded really, yeah.
So that's what you wanted to take.
Yeah, I just on face value, I thought, Team Jakari, that sounds like, yeah.
So looking at how chiefs rule now and in the olden times, do you think that there's a massive change? Because earlier on you mentioned that before we had prisons in the palace where when anyone does anything wrong, you're being put in there. But now it's the state's thing to do. What actually, or what were the things that our chiefs were doing back then that now it looks like government, because of politics, are now taking care of that?
You see, not much should change. Apart from the fact that now as a chief, I can't collect taxes and then directly use it for the development of the town. But you see, there's no such thing as small power. Power is power. Whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 100, power is power. And once you have it, you must use it. So I know some chiefs who say, well, I can't do this. Well, I can't do this. But things within your community, you must be able to lobby the community and sell the idea to them and move them along. It's difficult, but you have to. Fine. The road from Akosombo to Odumasa is like, hostile terrain. I can't do much about that. I mean, I don't have the money. I don't have anybody who's rich enough to construct 30 kilometers of road. But when I come within Edumasa, I should be able to call upon my people to say, look, this thing is important. And therefore, let's chip in and do this. Or sell the idea to somebody who can help to do it. So the role of a chief now, today, and I even think today the role of a chief, the responsibility of a chief today is way more than it is back then. Way more. I mean, people come and tell me the library has got no desk. Thankfully, my wife will come in there and sort the library out. The headmaster is on my case. He wants desks for the classrooms, but the desks are all appalling. I ring DC. Oh, they say they are buying Nisiko. Am I also going to say, well, is a buying humanity have startup? No. So I'm hoping to start a little campaign, and I want to do it nationwide anyway. That any child that hasn't got a chair and a table, somebody somewhere can afford a chair and a table. So the responsibility of a chief today, it's unenviable. It's unenviable. Everything falls under the jurisdiction. The hospital net, not it. I mean, if you're in a bathroom, you say and so. But publicly you think, well, who can I consult to get a net to come and fix it for them? But it's a government hospital or government responsibility. When they collect the taxes, they don't give it to you, but it's in your jurisdiction and it's your people who go there. So how do I get a net? I remember when I became a chief, the water in the clinic was really bad. So I got them a borehole, I got them a filter. Because at the end of the day, it's your own subjects or family members who will go there and they will dispense that water for them. So the role of a chief today is really, really, really too much, if I may say. It's too much, if I may say. But
okay, I thought that before it was way too much, because before you'd have to lead your people to war and all sort of things. Now, thankfully, there are no wars, but rather
war. There's still war. It's just that it's
against poverty and not human
poverty, against tables and chairs, against water, against borehole. You get them the borehole, and 3 months later, and I feel Tana say you. So I'm saying 200. So you find the 200 and give it to them. Who are you going to build? Yeah, who are you going to build? And then those at the top, borehole, no, it just happens to be at those at the down who get the borehole. So we at the top, what are you doing about us? You ring around, find somebody who will give you a borehole, sink a borehole. So yes, there's still war. It's just that there's no blood involved. But there's still, every day there's war.
Okay. Yeah. So in the olden times, before the colonial masters landed to Ghana or then Gold Coast, The chiefs were making all the decisions. Kings were doing everything for us. Then later, when the colonial masters came, they manipulated their ways, if I should say, and they began to rule the people through the kings or the chiefs. Do you think that it's a reason why now the political governance has kind of taken over? Because I'm sure that if we were still ruling per kings or chiefs, and even if we decide to come together as one, it will not be as we have a political governance now.
Well, you see, it's interesting because people look at chieftaincy as though it's one chaotic industry. And indeed, from afar, it looks very chaotic. But when you are in there, it's very, very structured, it's very measured, and it's very checked. However, we do it so seamlessly that from afar, you won't see it. So before I come out and decree or make an order and bang my chest, I've spoken to Obusia Penny, I've spoken to Jasi, Bemu, get all of them to agree. And then I'll come out and make that proclamation. From our side, it was as though I just dreamt about it, came out and said, no, the chieftaincy doesn't work like that. In our forefathers' wisdom, and I don't know where they got the wisdom from, they know that power is corrupt and absolute power is absolute, corruption. So as a chief, I have about 99% of authority is mine. You can't touch it. But almost no power. Almost no power. The power, however, is now split up in small pieces. So Jasi has power, Bemu has power, Sana has power, even the drama or Chema has power. But they don't have authority. So they don't have authority to use their power, and I don't have power to use my authority. So at every given time, if you're moving into a particular area, you have to call the sector minister or the sector chief to say, I'm moving into your area. A, B, C, D is what I want to do. And he can clearly tell you, no, they'll be trained. I do anything. Can't do anything. Whereas if I was the president, oh, yes, master. Yes, master. No. In chief stancy, there's no yes, master. He tells you no. And you cannot override it. And you can't say because of that, I'm changing you. Also in chieftaincy, ministers are appointed for the president, i.e. the chief. You don't go around appointing your ministers. So there's a family that appoints the Jasi. There's a family that appoints Sana. There's a family, so it's like the ministry would tell you that from today onwards, she's going to be our minister. So that if I'm not there and Ansah Kwao IV comes, she can say, oh, well, I don't want you as Jasi. You don't want to behind. You work with the ministers that you are provided with. So in chieftaincy, people's skills should be like your 1, 2, 3, your priority.
Okay.
Priority 1, priority 2, priority 3 is people skills. You should know how to relate with people. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere. Because these are not your favorites that you have appointed. These are people who, within their own right, have their own jurisdiction that they are operating in. And you have to try and sell your idea to them so you move along with it. You take somebody like Mankrado in chieftaincy, Mankrado or Kronti. He is the opposition leader and also the vice president. So can you imagine Atu Folsom being in Baumian's position? So you don't get more transparent than that. Can you imagine Atu Folsom working in Baumian's office? And in chieftaincy, everything, almost, and the Mankrado has more administrative responsibility than the chief.
Okay.
So just imagine running a country where everything went through the NDC leader before it came to the president. And he actually had, and the most dangerous thing, I don't even know why Nananum thought about this, is that, so Minister for Youth and Sport, i.e. Mbrantehene, he works in the office of the vice president. And as a chief, you need the youth to rule. And yet the youth are responsible to your opposition leader. You dare not offend him. So that's how come chieftaincy has survived all these ages. Why do you think the monarchs failed? Because the monarchs were running, and if we were to form chieftaincy today, in fact, we would have done the way the whites did it. If everything is for me, no opposition, but Nananum in their wisdom broke down their own power and gave it to somebody else. That I come and conquer this place, it is mine. And one of your cameramen moving, and I say, okay, you are going to be the vice president. You're not part of my family, but you're going to be there as the checks and balance. Who will do that today? Nobody will.
Yeah, nobody will.
So, if assuming we were able to emulate our governance into the structures with which chieftaincy is, so that the health ministry, they know who should be the senior chief director, so that when the president comes, this is the guy who's leading the health ministry. This is the person leading the police. This is the person leading this. So they are of their own mind. They are not bootlickers. You can't hire and fire at will. No. You better work with me. That's how come chieftaincy still survives. Otherwise, they would have kicked us all out. They would have kicked us all out. And so there's more accountability within that structures, because Obians rule. They're just giving you respect. They're just giving you respect. They are not scared of you. So I think that if modern governance, we had really looked at what the traditional governance was and modeled it against by limiting powers of the president and giving powers to the people he works with. And then you increase your relation, because they also have power, you increase your relationship with them. You would have been amazed where we would have been by now.
As a country.
As a country.
Wow.
As a country.
Okay. Banana, just like you said, a lot of people think that chieftaincy is kind of demonic and political governance is far better, because they seem to think that, it's a modern world, things have evolved. What can you tell our viewers, especially the youth, because we don't seem to have enough knowledge about our traditions and we try to copy from the Western world? What can you tell us in holding up our traditions as Ghanaians?
Well, I think first of all, we should take the blame and apologize to your generation for not teaching you enough, because it's very difficult to fall in love with something you don't know. Very, very difficult to fall in love with something you don't know, let alone support it or back it up. So we haven't done enough education. And we always tell stories about, you try waiting, and you try waiting, and you try waiting. I don't know why. If you open to Leviticus chapter 19, the whole chapter, all the do's and don'ts in that chapter is what a chief should abide by. You don't go near unclean spirit, human blood, all those things. However, people relate those things to chieftains. Yes, you always get bad chiefs and good chiefs, like you get a pastor who yes, you and sorry. Yes, so by all means you get a good chief and bad chief. But in strict terms, Leviticus chapter 19 is what a chief should abide by. Upright, clean. You don't go near dead bodies. Anything that is deemed unclean, as a chief, you stay away from.
Okay.
Now, why would a young person prefer the white governance and not the traditional governance? By the time you start doing A for apple, B for ball, when you graduate from University of Ghana, in your heart, you're complete European. You're just sympathetic towards things of African nature. And that's why we wait March, Ghana month. After that, March. The rest of the month, what are you? Yeah. So by the time we go through our educational structure, Professor Opukwajiman said it beautifully, by the time we finish, we are diseducated. If we were to, well, I think it has to be a state thing, that the way in which we educate people and enlighten people, they would appreciate it. That the virtues in tradition, the positiveness. You see, and most people who say chieftaincy demon, we should throw it away and everything, they live in cantonments, they live in airports, and so I think somewhere. But there are areas where there are no police, no hospitals, no courts, nothing. Ask yourself, how do you think those people survive? Why do you think they are not killing each other? Where do they get their justice from? Where do they get land from to farm and stuff like that? It is these community leaders that are hanging on to all these areas. There's no government is not present. They don't have post office. They don't do clinic. No, there's nothing there. It is the chiefs that are holding these communities in place. But even if government was present there, Why would you want to leave your God-given divine custom and follow somebody else's?
Yeah. So the youth need to be educated
Very paramount.
on our history and our tradition.
Our tradition, identity.
Yes.
Because that's who you are, an identity. As soon as you lose it, you're like the wind. And we can't be Australians. We can't be Chinese. We can't be Americans. Why do you think God did not create us to be Chinese? He could have, but for diversity, for color, for richness, for anticipation of tomorrow. That's why we are all different. That you move from Accra and within 2 hours, there's a different language, there's a different food, there's a different dance. So even if you are 80 and you're going to die, because you still think there's more you can see. But as for us, we only think that our language, our food, our dressing, everything should be exactly like what the white man is doing. I mean, how boring and what for? So we should be exactly what God created us to be. Ghanaians, Akans, Ghans, Airways, and enrich it to its health. Because I tell you, there is absolutely nothing wrong in the principles of our culture. So why are we throwing it all away? We shouldn't. We should not at all change and become white or Europeans.
Thank you so much, Ansah Kwao IV of Edumasa in the Eastern region.
The little Republic of Edumasa.
Yes. And just like Nana said, we don't have to throw away our traditions. Let's hold them in high esteem and let's educate our youth on our tradition so that we can finally accept our identity, because that is who we are as Guineans. Thank you so much for your time. This has been Our Roots, and my name is Michelle Ajikumu. See you another time.